What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York, calling from the quarantine zone again. Hope you all are doing safe. This time we got Nikki Jumper on the phone. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you here. I really enjoyed your latest single, Apocalypse Love. Could this almost serve as like a clear representation of maybe what the whole full-length Nikki Jumper album is going to sound like, or is this just the tip of the iceberg, as I like to call it?
Well, thank you so much. I super appreciate it. I really think that it is the tip of the iceberg in the sense of the style. I really, really believe that the future is genreless. It's something that I've struggled with a long time, was actually choosing a genre, choosing a style, choosing a lane. And I just decided that I wasn't going to let that be a barrier, and I wasn't going to put myself in a box in terms of what kind of music I'm going to put out, and, in regards to singles or albums or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, right now, working on the songs that we're working on, there is a lot of different styles and different sounds in what we're doing. So, yeah, definitely the tip of the iceberg.
Some death metal, maybe?
Maybe. That would be awesome. I would friggin' love to actually do something super, super, super heavy, like right next to a super, super, super poppy track.
That would be amazing. People's heads will spin.
I think it's the Aquarius in me that's just super into everything.
Well, my slogan for your music is 1 minute it'll make you bang your head, and then the next minute it'll make you spin your head. That's the best way I thought was able to describe your music, because there was inspiration. Just in Apocalypse Love alone, I saw many different sources of inspiration.
Thank you. I'm definitely inspired by a lot of different things, a lot of contradicting or seemingly contradicting things that shouldn't really be in the same room together, kind of things. But yeah, I mean, it's what I love. I have so many different influences, and I just can't choose. So I'm just like, fuck it, I'll just do it all. Or at least attempt to.
Kind of a cliche question, actually, but being that you take inspiration from more rock and more heavier material, but also taking inspiration from a lot of pop and electronica, was there maybe a first inspiration that kind of drove to the making of each song, or did each song maybe have a different source of inspiration?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like each song has its own thing that I get inspired from. It's usually at least one or two different things. Like right now, the song that we're working on right now, and we're actually doing the demo today. That song basically there's two inspirations. So one is Seven Rings by Ariana Grande, but I also want to put in some punk elements into it.
That's impressive, I gotta say. And I'd imagine, coming from Canada, where there's so much heavy metal out there, but there's also some amazing pop artists out there, that also has to influence you, just coming from Toronto, right?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, there was a huge punk scene, a huge metal scene that I was really, really involved in. But now, there's a lot of hip hop and trap, and obviously we have we have The Weeknd, we have Drake, there's so much that comes out of Canada. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely, it's just so a part of the culture right now, that it's really hard to, it bleeds into you, you know what I mean? So I'm like, oh my God, those 808s are just so good. But then I'm like, I want to, infuse that with the metal that I love, and just, all those different sounds and those different elements, I think just can feel so good together.
Definitely.
Unexpectedly.
Yeah, I think artists like you or Poppy or any of those artists are really really bridging the gap between, heavier music and quote unquote lighter music. I mean, heavy is so subjective, and everybody has their own threshold of how heavy they're willing to go anyway.
Yeah. I mean, if you looked at my Spotify recently played, you'd be like, what the hell? It's so confusing. because it flips from like one thing to its polar opposite. But growing up, like I always in my mind, I always imagined like, oh, like it would be so cool if there's like a fusion of these styles of songs, but there's nobody that I could emulate. And that was the most challenging thing, where I was just experimenting a lot, trying to make the sounds work together, and there were so many times I always failed miserably, and I just like couldn't get it because it hadn't really been done before. But now, there are artists that are actually able to like do these things and kind of make that sound work. And I think it has a lot to do with the willingness of the artists to be able to experiment and like be open to like messing up, and to be open to having things sound bad, and to be open to find the magic in those moments of worlds colliding, I guess, if that makes sense.
Definitely. I think like it's do you almost like look for inspiration? Like, do you have to actively look up different sources of inspiration, or does inspiration just come out of nowhere for you sometimes?
Good question. I feel like I don't seek it. I don't seek inspiration. I feel like inspiration is in just your daily life. Like when I'm just actively doing things, and I'm whatever it is that I'm doing, I'm like, this is cool. If I'm just sitting at home like waiting to be inspired or looking to be inspired, then it just doesn't happen. Then it's like kind of depressing.
Yeah.
Like it's like a searching for something. But I find that inspiration comes, when I'm out like experiencing life, experiencing, different things in culture. Even in COVID, right? Like it's difficult. But I think that there is inspiration, there is the muse in everything.
Definitely.
And that comes in with living, I think.
Yeah, I've always thought that you never had to look for inspiration. It's there whether you realize it or not.
Exactly.
Yep. And you mentioned like, having many different elements in your sound. So like trying new things and, you really going outside of your comfort zone has never even been a challenge for what you do, right?
Right, exactly. And for the longest time, the producers that I was working with initially, they were kind of pushing me to not be so expansive in my thinking, and they were trying to get me to do things that were a little safer, that wasn't so experimental, right? Because it's easier to make something that's a little more straightforward. So yeah, I never had any issues, with doing things like that, and that's not just with music. Kind of like my whole life, I was, no matter what I was doing, I would always kind of look outside the box of what is supposed to be. And I always joke that it's because I'm an Aquarius. But yeah, that's definitely, just about, I think, a part of who I am. It's really hard for me to just kind of do what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. And on top of that, artists, art is a living thing in itself, and it grows and develops, and the artist who creates it grows and develops as well. So I think naturally many things change over time.
Exactly. I totally believe that, and I think, everything is moving, everything is living, and, I don't think that it's really good to confine yourself to one idea or one notion or, one way of being, right? I think that's not a good way to be, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. Like, is there ever a time where maybe lyrics or a concept can help influence like the direction of the music, or do you need music before you have lyrics in mind altogether?
I usually actually start with lyrical content, or concepts of like a song title. That's usually how I start. And then, yeah, so it usually starts out with a name, or a title, or an energy, or like a visual that I have in my head of like what it looks like and what it feels like. And then we go and we make the beats and we make the music from there. And then we finish the lyrics based on the whole feel of that. That's the process that we have now. Like, it changes, but that's kind of what we're doing at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever had like the best lyrics ever, but then they're always like one syllable over like the arrangement of every song?
Oh, that happens all the time.
That's got to be the worst, right?
Yeah, I'm definitely a poet at heart. Like before I even was a songwriter, like when I was a kid, I would like always just like write poetry. So even now, like when I'm writing, I basically it starts off as poetry, and then I basically form and fit this poetry into a song form. So all the time, like it just I don't write it in song form first. I write it in like poetry form. So all the time, like my songs the lyrics don't fit perfectly.
Yeah.
And I have to like change things.
I studied poetry a couple of times while I was in college, and like the teacher brought up a good point that like songs are, they're very impactful and they make a great, they have a great artistic etiquette behind it, but like songs are not poems. It's almost kind of like a different writing skill altogether.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I've definitely had to adapt what I do because they're two totally different things. Yeah, when I usually starts out as like a poetry form first, and then I cut everything down, and kind of tear it apart, and then put it into song form because they're two totally different formats, and they call for totally different things.
Mm-hmm. Being that you put your heart and soul into an original poem, does it almost feel kind of like heartbreaking to kind of like chop it down to fit a song arrangement?
Yeah, it does. But I keep the original versions always. Like I never like erase everything. And what I actually have always wanted to do is put out like a poetry book alongside an album to kind of show like the original roots of like where the song came from. I haven't done that yet, but like that's definitely something that I would love to do, because I've like endless amounts of just like of pieces of poetry that I think are like I really enjoy them. Like I think that it would be nice to have them in a book one day. I mean, some people might hate them, but like whatever. I feel like something like poetry, it's so it's a very personal thing, right? So like it's something that not everybody will resonate with, obviously, and it hits a bit different than having like putting out music. But I definitely would love to do that.
I remember. I think a good example would be, My Chemical Romance's biggest song, "Welcome to the Black Parade." I don't know if you heard the original version of that song. They wrote it back in 2001 when they like first started it, and like you would not even think that like it was written by the same singer.
Oh wow. Oh my gosh, after this call, I'm definitely going to go and look it up.
Okay, it's called "The Five of Us Are Dying." That's the original name of the title.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah. Now, do you like to leave the lyrics open to interpretation, or because you put your heart and soul into it so much, you maybe try to engage the listener into what you're singing about?
I think it depends on the song, I think. I think it depends on the purpose of the song, because there are definitely some songs that I leave more open to interpretation, and other songs that are definitely meant to be like more emotional, I think. So I don't think there's a wrong way. I feel like it depends on the song, and also like I try not to be precious about my work. Like I when I write, even if I really adore something, I essentially write to throw it in the garbage. Wow. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's something that I learned a long time ago. Because you end up doing better work if it's not as sacred, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes the worst thing for an artist is to be actually attached to their work.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And to have expectations before you go into writing a song. Usually like when I write now, I write with the intent that like, okay, like I make it as a piece of artwork that nobody is going to see in my mind. Like I never think, oh, like are people going to like this? Is this going to be a certain way? I write as if it's just for myself, or it's going to go in the trash later. I try not to overthink it. And that's usually when the best things happen. The more detached that I am to it, the better it is. Because if I want it to be some great big thing, then I just can't come up with anything.
Yeah. So you don't really enter like the studio or writing mode with a preconceived idea, right? You try to maybe improvise. That's pretty much like the armature that starts everything.
Yeah. I mean, I start with the vision that I have for like an actual visual thing in my head. So I'm a photographer, and like I worked in film and things like that. So like it's not just music. Like I always see what it sounds like. So I start with that, and I start with the title of the song and like what the whole mood is of it, and then I just go into that, and then I kind of have it in its own little bubble, just to make its own like little piece of art, but not for anybody or anything, or to even have it as something that is gonna just like be like a big release or anything. I just do what I want to do just to create a cool piece of artwork, and then if it works, it works, and then if it doesn't, whatever. But I don't try to beat a dead horse, if that makes sense. Like I try not to be super precious with it, and I just treat them as like little art projects.
Yeah. Well, I've always said that expectations are like some of the worst things an artist could have ever.
100%. Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yep.
I definitely agree.
And working as, a songwriter and a poet, and you mentioned photography and film, you clearly have a lot of mediums in creativity that you work with. Is there a different mind frame depending on what medium you're working with, or is there a usual method behind the madness that applies to the creative process for you?
I mean, I think that, I don't know, I mean, that they're kind of interrelated, but they're kind of different at the same time. Like when I'm creating the visual side of it is very different than when I'm, doing anything to do with like in terms of the creation, right? It's just kind of in the moment of like what the energy is. I think the common thread is just being able to turn the energy of what I want something to be into something that's tangible, right? So like when I envision the energy of a song or a concept or an idea, I'm like, okay, how can I capture this energy in a lyric? How can I capture this energy in the sound of the instruments? How can I capture this energy in in the photos or videos or whatever it is? And that, I think, is what the common thing is. It's like, how can I make this energy tangible so people can experience what this feels like? Mm-hmm. That's kind of where I base everything that I create out of.
And it's still coming from you. So in the end, I think it's Nikki Jumper. And that led me into my next question, because you have like, a whole presentation element behind what you do. Do you almost feel like that in the music, or like that you almost kind of like portray a character in a way? Or like you feel like you have to kind of like exit yourself in a way in order to really get into that mode?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like yeah, no, like 100%. Yeah, I mean, I think it's all. I feel like with every piece of artwork, and it's like I feel like I'm embracing a different kind of energy in everything that I'm doing, right? So yeah, I feel like there's definitely an element of like character in everything, and there's also that whole idea of like like life is a stage, right? So it's like, yes, we do that with music. We do this with like when you're filming music videos, when people are like making films, performing on stage. Everyone, like you're becoming a character. You're embodying a certain energy, a certain way of being, and you're tapping into elements of yourself. And it's same thing in your day-to-day life, right? Like if somebody is going to their 9-to-5 job, they're essentially getting into their persona of who they are as somebody that's working at their job, because that's a different thing than who they are when they're at home, or when they're with their boyfriend or girlfriend, or when they're with their family. So I feel like everybody is so multifaceted in their character and their way of being. I just think that artists have a certain way of like intentionally looking at these personas and different facets of their personalities, and like stepping into those into like a theatrical and fun and entertaining way. But I feel like everybody has, you know, just different facets of their personality and different energy and different things that they want to explore and tap into, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I never believed that there was really such thing as like a personality trait. Like every person, I've always said that humans and chameleons are the closest thing in species because they all adapt to their environment and camouflage with many different ways.
Exactly. And I think that, yeah, so I 100% agree with you. And like, I feel like a chameleon sometimes, you know, because I feel so comfortable, you know, with creating all different genres of music and wearing all types of different clothes and being in all types of different situations. And it doesn't make any one thing less of me than the other, if that makes sense. So, yeah, so I feel like, yeah, like there is, you know, like when I'm recording different songs, I do need to step into different characters, right? But I think that that's just how it is with every thing in life. I think that we all have like access to different ways of being, and that's just, you know, kind of how it works with music and things like that.
Yeah. Every artist had a day job at one point, and if they are at their day job like they are on stage, I guarantee some of them would have been fired. Especially if you're a hardcore kid.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting, I think, philosophical thing to get into. That's why when you asked me that question, I was like, oh, man, where do I start? And we're like, because I think about this a lot, you know, I haven't really had the chance to talk about that really in, like, a public way of what I think about in that respect. But, yeah, I definitely think that, like, embracing alter egos is a super important thing in life, and to actually, like, do it intentionally. Right, I think it's like super empowering.
Definitely, and I was honored to be the first to bring that up.
Yes, well, thank you so much. It's so cool.
Yep. And the final question I wanted to ask you is the most difficult question of the whole interview. Are you ready?
Oh no. Okay. Oh yes. What is it?
How do you know when a song is done?
Oh man. Well, it's just a gut feeling. It's just a gut feeling, and I feel like once I smile and I'm like, fuck yeah, that's it, then it's done.
Oh, that's a very positive answer.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, that's essentially it. Like, I think it's just a gut feeling. I really try to, I try to make quick decisions, and I try not to let myself overthink things or think too hard about something, or overanalyze it, or be too self-critical. So, you know, I just like to work on something, and then once I get that gut feeling that it's done, and then I don't like mull over it like 1,000 times.
Yeah.
You know, I think that can. I know a lot of my artist friends that do that, and it literally is like the number one cause of depression. It's just like overanalyzing and overthinking, and yeah, just like trying to make something too perfect. It's like it's a recipe for disaster, and it's like the number one way to be unhappy.
One of my favorite lyrics of all time is "My search for true perfection will lead me endlessly," and I think that is one of the most important lyrics that people should look up.
Yeah, seriously. It's so true. So yeah, I mean, for me it's easy. It's just when I feel like it's good, like not even that it's like a good song, but just like when like my gut is like, okay, this is it, and it's done. Yeah, I mean, it's not like I want to put out things that are shitty. It's just once I feel that gut feeling that it's done, then it's done, right? Then there isn't this like after thought of just like, you know, obsessing over the perfectionism of it. And I find it's much easier that way. Yeah. Just to you know, to be happy.
I think it takes more skill to walk away from art than it is to get into it.
Probably, yeah. Because yeah, it's definitely. I think that's just it's a lesson in non-attachment, I would say, because it's so easy to become attached, you know. And it's that same philosophy of, you know, not allowing things to be sacred or precious when it comes to art, right? So that whole process starts in the beginning of the creative process, right? If you in the beginning decide, okay, I'm going to write this to throw it out, and the whole process goes that way, then at the end it's not going to be a thing that you're super attached to or obsessed with. It's just, it is what it is, and then it can be what it is without having, the anxiety around it.
Definitely. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Just obviously thanks to a certain virus that I choose not to name publicly. Obviously, shows aren't happening at the moment, but can we be expecting a full-length Nikki Jumper album very soon? Can we maybe be expecting some live shows to support it? Anything you're allowed to promote?
Yeah, so I'm completely independent, so I'm allowed to say whatever I would like to say. I don't have anybody telling me what to do or not to or whatever. So basically for everything happening in the world, it kind of delayed stuff that I was working on. So I'm working on some new singles right now, and towards closer to the end of the year, we're going to have some new music videos, some new songs, some new collaborations with some friends that are in the punk scene, which is going to be really fun. So towards the end of the year, we're going to have some more stuff coming out, and then depending on the whole live show situation, as soon as we can do that, then I'm definitely going to do that, because I miss performing. It's been so long. As soon as the world comes back in that way, then I'm definitely going to be playing some shows for sure.
And I'm looking forward to the day you play in New York City.
Oh my God, I can't wait. I cannot wait. I love New York so much. So that's as soon as we can, the first place I'm gonna go is New York.
Oh, well, we look forward to it. All right. Let me know what that show day is. I'm marking it on my calendar.
Perfect.
Awesome. But thank you so much. Everybody, we are here with Nikki Jumper. Be sure to check out their new single, Apocalypse Love. If you haven't already, this is Alex from Heavy New York. We will see you next time.